Foods labeled as organic do not always have a higher willingness to buy among consumers. Most people agree that organic foods are healthier, but they're not more likely to buy them for that reason. But they will be more likely to buy them if they believe they're a higher quality product, or if they're a so-called vice food like cheese, chocolate, cookies, biscuits, that kind of thing. So what this means is that consumers will use the fact that chocolate is organic as a guilt-reducing mechanism or a justification for buying that product. But they won't do the same thing for virtue organic products such as vegetables, fruit, and eggs. So how can your business offer a guilt-reducing mechanism? A study of 15,000 mobile phone users discovered that people are twice as likely to respond to mobile ads when they're on a crowded subway train compared to people on non-crowded trains. Follow-up surveys determined that when people become more crowded and their personal space is invaded, they tend to turn inwards and become more susceptible and responsive to mobile ads. So have you ever thought about the environment that your audience consumes your ads? A study from the University of Pennsylvania found that grocery store shoppers tend to travel around the outer perimeter or racetrack of a store and periodically make short excursions into an aisle to find an item, and then back out the same way that they came to continue their racetrack, as opposed to what many people thought, that people would go up and down many aisles during their visit. So what this means is that end cap displays on the end of each aisle are a lot more important for marketing displays, and also that products in the middle of aisles tend to get less face time than many people might have thought. So how do customers travel throughout your store or website? E-commerce stores have a distinct advantage over retail stores, and that's unlimited shelf space, but consumers have a limited brain power to assess all the options, so you need two important things to make this work well. Number one is a recommendation agent to allow the consumer to narrow down all those options to just a handful that are most relevant to them. And number two is a comparison matrix so they can weigh the pros and cons among that smaller selection to make a more informed choice. Think Airbnb's search function. So how can your company offer the best product selection in your industry? Consumer behavior can be influenced based on the way that you frame your messaging. For example, it was found that proscriptive messaging was more effective at getting children to eat fruit over candy. Proscriptive messages are negative statements that tell you what you should not do, whereas prescriptive messages are positive statements that tell you what you should do. So how might your company use more proscriptive messaging in your marketing? Consumers have lower price sensitivity to brands that are highly credible. In other words, the degree to which a product's price affects a customer's decision to buy is lower if they feel that brand is more credible than its competitors. Price sensitivity is tied to uncertainty, so highly credible businesses make customers feel like there is a lower risk, so they're willing to pay more money. Business can increase its credibility by having consistent marketing messages and strategies over time, and by maintaining product quality. So, has your business's marketing strategy been consistent over time? Online consumers are motivated to share online advertisements based on the need for self-enhancement. In other words, when somebody believes an ad is consistent with the person they want to become, their self-identity, they're more likely to share it with others. As a marketer, you can use this to your advantage by creating ads that feed the ego of your audience. So, how can you create an ad that helps your audience reveal or reinforce their self-identity? Word of mouth is spread because of two key factors. Number one, the product's originality, and number two, how useful it is. Now, contrary to what many people think, product originality does not actually increase sales, but it does increase how much people talk about it. So ultimately, a product's usefulness is the key driver in affecting sales, but the key discovery is that highly original products that have low usefulness tend to receive negative word of mouth and are more likely to fail. So, are you focusing on making your product useful before making it original? When higher priced, higher quality orange juice brands promote, they gain market share from the lower quality, lower priced brands. But when those lower priced brands promote, they don't gain market share. The reason for that is because people are unwilling to downgrade from their higher quality product. This is called loss aversion. Basically, it means that people are unwilling to give up something of higher quality, even if it means saving a bit of money. So, how can your company focus on what your customers are likely to lose versus what they're likely to gain? The vampire effect. It's this idea that a celebrity endorser will overshadow your company or product because they're so popular. So in order for consumers to remember your brand and not just the celebrity, you need to do two things. Number one, you need the celebrity to have congruence with your brand. And number two, you need that celebrity to have a strong cognitive link between your brand and that celebrity. This might happen naturally with extensive exposure to your ads over time, or with some sort of cue that triggers consumers to associate and link your brand with a celebrity. For example, think of Michael Bublé and the bubbly water company and how they sound similar. So is your celebrity spokesperson congruent with your brand? Losses loom larger than gains. Customers who have a negative experience with a service provider are less likely to stay with that service provider in the future. Duh. But what's interesting is that people who had a great experience are just as likely to stay with that service provider as people who had a neutral experience. So this means that it's more important to minimize poor experiences than anything else. So how can your company minimize poor customer experiences? Another study on customer satisfaction found that customers are more likely to stop buying from a business and spread negative word of mouth if there's no easy way for them to share a complaint with the business. On the other hand, consumers are more likely to repurchase if complaints are encouraged and if the business promptly addresses any complaints they get. So does your company openly encourage complaints? A study confirmed that there's a relationship between customer satisfaction and perceived service quality. More specifically, that a positive experience led to a long-term feeling that the service was high quality. Now, this sounds like a fairly obvious finding because you should always strive to achieve a good customer satisfaction. However, there are many ways of achieving customer satisfaction other than your customer's experience with your product and service. For example, effective communication early on in the relationship might be an easy way to win customer satisfaction, which would then improve the customer's overall perception of the service's quality in the future. So, what is your company doing to achieve customer satisfaction early on? It turns out that one of the most effective ways to create a very satisfying service encounter is when employees respond well to a failure in the core service delivery. For example, if a customer had to wait a long time to get into a restaurant, but then had a really good experience with the waiting staff and received a free drink, they would be more likely to remember that as a very satisfying experience, maybe even more so than if they hadn't had to wait at all and just had a normal experience. On the other hand, the biggest source of a very dissatisfying experience was when an employee was unable or unwilling to respond to a service failure. And importantly, in this case, the dissatisfaction is not coming from the failure of the core service, but rather the failure of responding to that failure by the employee. So how can your company enable employees to quickly and effectively respond to service failures? Do TV ads increase sales on mobile phones or computers? One study discovered that yes, they actually do under certain circumstances. Direct response TV ads that had a call to action to go online or another action-focused message were found to increase both website visits and sales. TV ads focused on delivering information about a product and that were more emotionally driven were found to actually reduce the amount of traffic that goes to a website, but also increase sales, suggesting that TV sent fewer people to the site, but that they purchased more. Lastly, TV ads that were just focused on being cute or too visually appealing saw no increase in traffic or sales. So, do your TV ads include action, information, or emotion? Some companies don't like encouraging user-generated content, or UGC, because they have no control over what customers are saying about their business. But UGC is proven to have so many more benefits than companies might realize. In addition to providing exposure to the company, UGC posters also receive value when they post content because they gain satisfaction in helping other people. Also, UGC provides a great opportunity for companies to collect information from reviews, recommendations, ratings, and other useful feedback. So how is your company enabling its customers to post UGC? Can negative publicity increase sales? It turns out yes, it can. Negative book reviews in the New York Times was found to increase sales, especially among relatively unknown authors. But negative reviews did tend to hurt established authors. So are there any unconventional, possibly controversial ways your business can gain publicity? You, me, and everyone else, whether we realize it or not, are constantly trying to become an ideal version of ourselves. In other words, we're trying to seek or verify our identity. The internet has allowed consumers to immerse themselves in niche communities that allow them to move closer to that identity they're seeking. So how can your company create a community that helps a specific audience find a sense of belonging? In B2B situations, there's a U-shaped relationship between brand sensitivity and purchase risk. What this means is that when businesses are buying low-risk products, they tend to rely more on the strength of the brand than who is objectively providing the best service. This is because it helps them simplify their choice for a very small decision. Medium-risk products are purchased more objectively, so the brand is less important. But then interestingly, high-risk decisions are again then based more on the brand. So how does your company's brand stack up against your competitors? Consumers are more likely to purchase products based on an influencer marketing sponsorship when the post has informative value, the influencer has a high perceived trustworthiness, the influencer is attractive, and the influencer has similarities to the audience. So, do your influencer partnerships resemble your audience and share informative content? With regards to viral marketing, a pleasant emotional tone in an ad is more likely to increase attitudes towards the ad, towards the company placing the ad, and also increase the likelihood somebody shares it with somebody else, increasing its virality. The study suggests that shocking or scaring your audience is not the most effective way to create virality. So, does your viral marketing have a pleasant tone? It turns out that both positive and negative online chatter about a company correlates to fluctuations in the company's stock price. In fact, it turns out that the online chatter tends to lead the stock price by a couple days. The biggest opportunity for marketers here is to consider researching what people are saying about your company online, as it could signal potential problems that could lead to long-term damage to the company. So, does your company do any social listening? You know that icky feeling when you walk into a Walmart that hasn't been renovated in 15 years? That's called the servicescape. The servicescape, or the layout and physical design of a store, can help both external marketing goals and internal organizational goals. For customers, the servicescape acts as a sort of packaging, kind of like a product packaging, that affects what they think about the brand, potential usage of products, and the relative quality of the business. For employees, the servicescape affects how effectively they can do their work duties and how effectively they can interact with customers. So, does your company's servicescape help both your customers and employees? AI-powered chatbots are just as effective as proficient workers and 4 times more effective as inexperienced workers at generating sales, but only when the consumer does not know that it's an AI-powered chatbot. When a customer knows it's AI, the sales drop by as much as 79%. So, has your company considered AI-powered customer support? When hiring freelancers online, buyers were more likely to pick freelancers with a high reputation and were also willing to pay them more money. Interestingly, the absence of a reputation system or a method that allows buyers to assess the reputation of freelancers caused them to be more likely to cancel their job posting due to uncertainty. Therefore, freelance websites can make more money by implementing a more robust reputation rating or filtering tool. So, does your marketplace business have a robust filtering system? Existing customers develop negative attitudes when they're exposed to disadvantaged conditions compared to new customers. In other words, existing customers don't like when new customers get discounts and preferential treatment. It turns out that differential pricing actually causes distrust in new customers as well, which ultimately lowers their satisfaction and lowers their likelihood to continue doing business. So how can your company provide an unfair advantage in favor of existing customers? It was found that failed service recovery increased counterfactual thinking in consumers, which then led to negative word of mouth online. In other words, negative online word of mouth was likely to happen when a company was unable to solve a dissatisfied customer's problem using customer service. And one of the precursors to negative word of mouth happening was called counterfactual thinking, which is basically when customers think into the past and wonder what could have happened. So how might your company minimize counterfactual thinking in its customers? It's beneficial to combine your customers' losses into one and then separate what they gain into individual parts. So for example, if you're selling a $10,000 car with a $1,000 sound system and a $1,000 leather seat upgrade, market it as a $12,000 package, but then talk about the numerous benefits of the sound system and the added comfort of the leather seats on their own. This increases the total perceived value of that package combined. So, how can your business combine customer losses and separate its gains in its marketing? One study found that loyalty programs don't consistently increase loyalty between customers and a business. Oftentimes, loyalty programs don't provide enough incentive for a customer to change his or her behavior. Also, a very small percentage of customers often understand how the loyalty program even works. So, how can your company create an easy-to-understand loyalty program with high incentive? Products that require a high involvement of a consumer to make a purchase decision are most effectively sold with a thoughtful argument about the product's attributes, whereas low involvement products can be sold by the endorsement of a likable and credible celebrity or influencer. In other words, if your product requires a lot of mental calories before buying, then focus on high quality ad copy. But if it requires few mental calories, then consider selling it with an influencer. So, does your product have a low or high involvement for buying? Consumers trust information posted by other consumers more than information published by manufacturers, especially things like user-generated content and discussion boards, presumably places like Reddit and forums. The people who post UGC on these discussion boards are considered opinion leaders, and one way for marketers to learn from this is to figure out how to influence these opinion leaders. Other studies have discovered that media publications are a common source of influence for these opinion leaders. So how can your company get more positive word of mouth by generating media publicity? Consumers experience a higher perceived quality online when a website is easy to use, has a functional design, works reliably, and appears to protect their privacy. So does your website provide a safe, easy to use, and reliable customer experience? A study found that banner ads with a red color scheme were clicked 69% more time than ads with a blue color scheme. Other studies have confirmed that red colors tend to do a better job at capturing attention, while blue colors are associated with calmness. So have you put any thought into the color theory of your ad creatives? Consumers learn more from reviews of a specific book than their previous experience reading books in the same genre. And unsurprisingly, fake reviews led to greater customer uncertainty. So does your business have a strategy in place for generating authentic customer reviews? Have you ever heard of the IKEA effect? It's this idea that people are willing to pay more for something that they created than an identical product that was created by somebody else. A study confirmed that consumers were willing to pay more for products they successfully co-created because it fulfills a psychological desire to signal to themselves and others that they're competent. However, the risk with this approach is that poor results tend to reflect poorly on the company rather than the person assembling it. Another challenge is that consumers are often reluctant to participate in co-creation in the first place. So, are there opportunities for your company to co-create your product or service with its customers? For example, co-creating a strategy. Similarly, customers who co-create a service are more likely to enjoy that service than services they did not take part in co-creating. So are there opportunities for your company to co-create with its customers? It was found that narrow brand positioning creates a stronger competitive advantage than broad brand positioning because it helps companies resist competition. Narrow brand positioning is when you focus your marketing on one or few unique benefits, whereas broad positioning uses many. So narrow is stronger and more resistant to competition. So does your company use broad or narrow brand positioning? Hotel customers who booked online were more loyal to that business in the future than hotel customers that booked offline. When asked why, respondents said that information was more readily available, they could actually see photos of what the rooms looked like, and they could book 24/7 at their convenience. So how can your business improve its online booking system? When using Likert rating scales to collect feedback from customers, respondents tend to rate lower on average when only the two endpoints are labeled and the middle ones are left blank. Respondents rate higher overall when all of the points in the Likert scale are labeled. So this positivity bias with fully labeled points is caused by people with mixed feelings who are forced to choose a side, and they tend to choose a safer and more neutral option. So are there any biases in the way your business collects data? Let's talk about movies. A study found that having a prominent star was important for boosting revenue, which comes as no surprise. But it was found that participation from a star boosted the film's initial revenue enough to overcome the subsequent decline in revenue if it was poorly received from the public, proving that stars do play a very important role in a film's financial success as well. I would speculate that businesses might experience something similar when working with influencers. So, who are the prominent influencers that can grow anticipation for your product launch? Let's talk about word of mouth. Information was more likely to be shared with close friends than acquaintances, which is not surprising. But this is mostly because people talk more frequently with their close friends, so word of mouth was more likely to happen. Interestingly though, the study found that close friends were not more likely to share information with each other when they shared the same interest. In other words, if a person loves cars, they're likely going to share something interesting about cars with all of their close friends, even if they don't love cars themselves. This could open up some interesting word-of-mouth strategies where you target close friends of your audience who might not even be interested in your product or service. So, does your company have a strategy in place for promoting word of mouth? It was found that viral marketing relies more on provocative content than traditional television advertising. Nearly all viral ads assessed in this study had some element of humor to them. Also, violence and nudity were two other main components that were common among many viral ads. One reason for this may be because television is very regulated and doesn't allow for overly violent or sexual content, whereas the unregulated nature of the internet creates opportunities for advertisers to shock and awe. So, has your company tried any viral marketing ideas? Most marketers understand the importance of delivering something of value to an audience, but what exactly does value mean? Most people view it as a simple transaction where consumers receive something that has utility in exchange for some kind of sacrifice, usually attention, time, or money. But other academics argue that value is more complex and it requires consumers to weigh many other things as well, such as product quality and perhaps more importantly, hedonic value, which refers to the emotional, entertainment, or experience-based benefits of a product or service. So how does your company create utility and hedonic value? Location congruent advertising was found to be more effective than location incongruent advertising, but only when the ads were also relevant with the consumer's goals. In other words, modern location-based targeting strategies such as geofencing do appear to be more effective than general broad targeting, but the ads still do have to serve the interest of the audience seeing them. So can you find opportunities to target your audience in a more specific geographic area? Is it better to invest your marketing budget into SEO or search advertising? This study didn't have a definitive answer, but did lean more towards SEO. They found that investment in SEO increased the likelihood of the content being more valuable and relevant to the user, which creates a better experience and possibly better returns, whereas PPC ads might not have the same level of quality. So, does your company have an SEO strategy? Baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z all have different values, attitudes, and preferences that influence their purchasing decisions. For example, when shopping at retail clothing stores, baby boomers tend to prioritize product quality, visiting just a few stores and only when they need to get an item, and looking for timeless designs. On the other hand, Gen Y will regularly visit 5 to 20 stores, are more flexible in buying both expensive and inexpensive items, and put more effort into staying on top of current trends. Understanding motivators among these different generations might affect how you choose to market to them. So have you thought about the motivators of your audience's generation? Consumers purchase scarce or limited products because it satisfies their need for uniqueness, conformity, and to avoid future regret. These factors can increase the perceived value of your product to some people, which can increase their willingness to buy it. The need for uniqueness is most prominent for limited edition products or customized products, while the need to avoid future regret is satisfied by limited time offers more than supply-driven scarcity. So how is your company using scarcity in its marketing strategy? Corporate social responsibility, or companies that invest in philanthropic or charitable initiatives, they're most effective when they represent the very basis or core values of the company as opposed to just one-off CSR events. And CSR initiatives do boost sales, it turns out. But most interestingly, the biggest benefit of CSR is long-term loyalty gains from customers. In short, it's best for you to deploy a CSR strategy over a long period of time that's consistent with your company's core values. So, what company values can your business build a CSR initiative off of? The effectiveness of a company's customer relationship management tool, or CRM, relies on management of the company to acknowledge that the CRM is a vital component of the company's strategy, and they must engage in activities that demonstrate their commitment to using that software. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So, is your company's management fully invested in its CRM tools? Have you ever wondered if brand awareness ads actually improve performance of a conversion campaign later on in the funnel? Well, a study seemed to confirm that they actually do. The study discovered that display ads caused the search ad CPA to decrease by 48% and the search ROI to increase by 38%, but only after the display ads had been in market for about 2 weeks. So, is your business using awareness ads as part of its marketing strategy? The manner in which information is presented changes how persuasive it is. Specifically, information presented in a highly vivid manner was more likely to be remembered and affect judgment. For example, having a face-to-face conversation with somebody about a product is more likely to shape how you think and feel about it than if you were to just read about it in a newspaper. And this is because it creates a more vivid memory of that product. So how can your company create more face-to-face communication or vivid memory of your product? Negative reviews tend to draw more attention from prospective customers. But what's interesting is that for search goods, which are things like cameras, where consumers can evaluate the product according to their specific attributes, a negative review is probably not enough to deter them from purchasing because they'll consider the product features more. Whereas experience goods, such as an airline ticket for example, can vary in quality from one customer to the next. And so customer reviews are a lot more influential because there isn't much additional information about the experience that will make the consumer confident in their decision. So how can your company create customer advocates to increase positive reviews? Brands with a sensory social image were better off with red logos. So these are things you buy because you like the brand or the feeling associated with buying their product. So things like perfume and luxury products. So have you thought about your brand's color theory? Consumers encode non-monetary costs and effort into the price of a product. For example, an increasing number of people consider time to be an important commodity, and so you can increase the perceived value of your product or service by building features that reduce time, effort, and search costs for potential customers. So how can your company reduce the perceived non-monetary costs of buying your product or service? User-generated content, or UGC, is comparable to focus groups for identifying abstract customer needs. This provides some companies with a new and possibly less expensive method for collecting user data to develop better products, especially in industries like automobiles and mobile phones where there's a substantial amount of UGC content to collect data from. So is your company studying UGC for product development ideas? You can improve your customer shopping experience by focusing on the 5 key dimensions of shopping value, which are number 1, functional value. So this is finding what they want or need. Number 2, self-gratification. So it helps them relax or relieve stress. Number 3, epistemic value. So it gives them inspiration or inspires curiosity. Number 4 is socialization value. So it's an opportunity to spend time with friends and family. And then number 5 is transaction value. So they enjoy the thrill of finding a good deal. So does your customer experience satisfy the 5 dimensions of shopping value? Consumers have increased perceptions of brand value when companies invest in CSR initiatives, things like charity donations, during times of recession. So how can your company use its resources for good during rough times? When shopping online for groceries, consumers tend to buy larger product sizes and tend to be less price sensitive when compared to in-person shoppers. Also, online shoppers are less likely to switch away from brands they're currently loyal to, which is a good opportunity for companies who currently have strong market share. So how can you persuade your customers to consider your company's online shopping experience? People are motivated to behave consistently with their identities, the ideal version of themselves they're striving to become. But as the perceived distance between the current self and their ideal desired state increases, so does their effort to try and portray their identity to others. Social media is a tool that closes this gap and allows people to share the best possible version of themselves in line with their identity. This is also why one of the most powerful marketing techniques is for companies to appeal to aspirational versions of their customers by showing successful versions of what their customers desire to be. So how can you portray an aspirational version of your customers in your marketing? Companies operating in highly commoditized markets should focus on customer intimacy early on, before the market becomes highly commoditized. The reason for this is that customer intimacy is one of the few distinguishing factors that drives performance for these types of businesses that would otherwise have very similar operational excellence. One example of how to improve customer intimacy is by adopting robust CRM processes. So what is your company doing to establish better relationships with its customers in the long term? Once a prospect knows enough about a product category, they begin seeking more information about specific product attributes. As they become more knowledgeable, they begin asking an even greater variety of questions, including things about alternatives and competitors. By understanding this, you might consider creating different content at different stages in this user journey. So, does your company communicate with its prospects differently in each stage of the customer journey? If a blogger has a high perceived trustworthiness, then their readers are able to more effectively elaborate on the information they learned after reading the blog content. The reason for this is because readers spend less time scrutinizing the message and are more likely to accept the arguments as being valid without extra thought. So, how can your business improve its perceived trustworthiness with its audience? Let's talk about brand awareness. It turns out that it's more important for your brand to be easily remembered than for it to be remembered favorably. It was found that people tend to associate brand salience or importance based on a yes-no measure as opposed to a degrees of association measure. This means your time is probably better spent thinking about creative ways of capturing attention than thinking about how your brand can look favorably. So what are you doing to become the most recognizable brand in your marketplace? A 1-point increase in customer satisfaction led to an 11.5% increase in economic return over a 5-year period for a typical company in Sweden, according to this one study. As a result, your company might consider treating resources that are allocated to increasing customer satisfaction kind of like an investment where you can actually get a measurable return from it. So how much is your company investing into customer satisfaction? A study discovered that music streaming services cause consumers to listen to a greater quantity and diversity of music compared to buying individual music. They also discovered that streamers listen to songs on average fewer times each, except the hits. They listen to their newly discovered hits more frequently than they did before. So how can your company provide greater access to the catalog of products in your industry? If a clothing company wants to sell online through its website, it needs to consider the risks that come with not being able to physically examine the product before buying it. It turns out that well-known clothing brands are able to sell more effectively online because consumers can reflect on the associations they have in their memory and have more confidence in buying the products. But you can reduce risks by adding features that instill more confidence and also provide a more functional shopping experience. An example of this would be investing in higher quality product photos. So how might your company reduce its customers' online shopping hesitancy? Gender stereotypes in advertising are proven to have a negative impact on both genders. For example, stereotype portrayals of women in ads cause both women and men to react negatively, and same with portrayals of men. So is your marketing free of gendered stereotypes? Consumers are more willing to buy from companies that commit to social causes such as environmental protectionism, animal rights, and labor practices. However, they're not willing to sacrifice product functionality. Rather, if two products are comparable in quality and function, then the one with the social backing will have this slight advantage. So, does your company support a social cause? Let's talk about mobile apps. Mobile apps are becoming a useful tactic for businesses to engage their customers on the go. But what types of customers are best served with these types of apps? It turns out that mobile apps are most effective at increasing sales for customers who live far from a physical store. Also, among customers who currently purchase exclusively from the retail store and not online. So how can your business provide a more convenient experience for hard-to-reach customers? There are two main reasons people create user-generated content, or UGC. Number one, they post content that helps them defend their ego or cover up insecurities. In other words, minimizing their self-doubts. And number two, it's socially driven, meaning they think the important people in their lives will like the content they post. So how can your company provide its customers with opportunities to fulfill ego-defensive or socially driven UGC? When paying for website banner ads, the credibility of the advertiser and the company that's placing the ads are important in affecting the attitudes and purchase intention of the audience. So are you making sure your company's ads are being shown on the most credible ad platform? An interesting study of about 3,000 display ads discovered two effective advertising methods. The first is to create obtrusive or attention-grabbing ads with strong visuals. These work well. The second method is using what they call matching ads or dynamic ads, where you might be served an ad of a specific car model based on the specific car you were looking at on the dealership's website yesterday. Interestingly, combining these two approaches together doesn't seem to work well. This is because consumers seeing personalized dynamic ads is already a little bit weird, and so combining that with something that's obtrusive and attention-grabbing makes them feel like they're being manipulated. So is your company responsibly retargeting its audience? When consumers are aware of a brand and have a positive attitude towards it, they're more likely to be persuaded by the marketing initiatives. When attempting to increase brand awareness, it's important to consider a few things. Number one is to use multiple communication channels to get in front of the same audience and to have a consistent marketing message across all those channels. Also, understand that the marketing initiatives you do today will affect the success of marketing initiatives you do in the future. For example, if you constantly offer discounts of your product, you might become known as the discount brand. So is your company thinking about the long-term brand associations with your current marketing campaigns? A study comparing paid advertising and social engagement found that neither forms of media do an excellent job at informing consumers about products or services. But what they found was that paid advertisements were very effective at creating influence and reminding customers about a brand, whereas social engagement was better for enhancing the enjoyment of an existing audience. So is your company using social media to enhance existing customer experience and using ads to generate awareness? Each generation of shoppers views value differently. Baby boomers value utility more than Gen X, while Gen Y value greater choice and variety. Interestingly, shopping malls are able to provide a similar level of shopping value to all generations, which means all their unique values are satisfied with the shopping mall model. What this means is shopping mall owners and marketers don't have to spend as many resources on improving shopping value and can instead focus on improving attitudes towards specific amenities, such as improving safety, increasing entertainment options, upgrading decor, and improving cleanliness. Businesses tend to give digital referrals to other businesses that are in close proximity rather than businesses that are far away. This is because of something called Coopetation, where businesses try to gain an advantage in their marketplace by cooperating with their competitors. It's also true that the closer two businesses are together, the closer their marketing strategies will resemble each other. So are there opportunities for Coopetation in your marketplace? A study of customer communities found that customers spend 18% more with the company after joining the community, which proves there is economic value in building these communities, such as a Facebook group or otherwise. Unsurprisingly, the biggest returns came from customers who are actively posting in these communities as opposed to the customers just lurking and reading comments. So is there an opportunity for your company to host an online community? It was found that background music in a store increases sales, but weirdly, it was also found that it negatively affects the enjoyment of being in the store. Males preferred faster paced and louder music, while females preferred slower paced and quieter music. So have you considered adding or adjusting background music to your store? A user has a more positive brand attitude and is more likely to click onto an ad when it is personalized to them and appears to be highly relevant. These effects are even more significant when the user has a positive attitude toward the medium or the advertising platform that the ad is being shown on. For example, if it's a Facebook ad, it's going to be more effective if a user has a positive attitude towards Facebook. So how can your company create a more personalized ad experience for its audience? People perceive and process online ads differently based on the motives they have for using the internet during that session. For example, somebody going online to shop will react more positively to an ad than somebody going on YouTube for entertainment. So this just goes to show that it's not only important to get in front of the right audience, but at the right time as well. So are your company's ads being served to your audience at the right time? Consumers prefer brand names where there's a match between the phonetic symbolism of the words and the product attributes. For example, the word pip has a forward vowel sound, which means the tongue is toward the front of the mouth when you say it. These types of sounds are associated with things like speed, faster, and bright, whereas back vowel sounds such as pop are associated with things like larger, slower, and darker. So does the sound of your brand name match your product attributes? Extension products are when a company uses its established brand name on a new product. Good examples include Reese's Puff Cereal, Snicker ice cream bars, Tide stain remover pens, and Honda lawnmowers. Bad examples include Colgate kitchen entrees, Arizona nacho cheese dip, or Harley Davidson cake decorating kits. In order to increase the likelihood that customers will buy an extension product and pay a premium price for it, a company must invest in improving the parent brand quality and make sure that the extension products are relevant to that parent brand. So, can your business create an extension product for its most loyal customers? Customer service is the most important aspect of customer experience for online grocery shoppers. The ability to talk to a live person increases positive interactions, which increases repeat business and word of mouth. So, does your online experience offer real-time customer support? When a B2B supplier had a presence on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, it had a positive impact on the brand's strength. Specifically, the increased interactivity of being present on social media increased their perceived partner quality, and the increased responsiveness of their social media had a positive effect on perceived commitment. So is your B2B business using social media? Advertisers increased their website visits by 12% and conversions by 13% by varying the ad creatives shown to individuals based on their previous ad viewing history. For example, if you had 2 ad creatives in your campaign, you'd want to show the best one first to your audience, and then let's say after 2 weeks, you'd want to show the second one to reduce ad fatigue. But if the time between the first and second ad impression is 4 weeks or more, then you're better off just showing the same creative twice because the fatigue would have been restored. So do you have enough ad creative variety in your campaign? Consumers are just as likely to follow an artificially intelligent influencer as a human influencer. These new AI influencers are perceived as being less trustworthy, but they're more effective at generating word of mouth, which means they could be a good opportunity for your company to expand its influencer marketing program. So has your company considered using AI influencers? Customization increases perceived service quality, customer satisfaction, loyalty, and trust. And customization is especially beneficial for companies that have high trust with their customers but low levels of customer satisfaction. So how can your company offer more customized products or services? It turns out that online stores are just as effective as brick and mortar stores at producing strong emotions and creating attachment with customers. They're also just as likely to create word of mouth. So does your online store provide the same level of experience as your physical store? Do YouTube or Instagram sponsorships actually work? Well, it turns out that an influencer's longtime fans, the ones with the highest level of trustworthiness, have the highest purchase intent among all of the audience. The best way to engage with the less engaged segment of an influencer's audience is by sharing information on where to look for more information about the product or service. Meaning they'll still be persuaded by the influencer, but they need to do their own research. So providing them with that source of information is beneficial. So how engaged is your influencer partner's audience? It's common for companies to follow their customers on Twitter in hopes that they'll become brand advocates, but it turns out that this actually decreases the likelihood they'll post content about the brand, and actually also decreases the likelihood they'll post content at all. But the study did discover a trend where consumers tend to be posting less and less on Twitter over time, while companies are posting more and more. So Twitter might be becoming more of a platform for companies to broadcast their marketing messages. So does your company have a Twitter strategy in place? Video games with increased customization features cause users to have greater recall of sponsored placements. Also, as a marketer, you should consider opportunities where users can have a more interactive and immersive experience actually using your product in the game, instead of just placing your logo somewhere in the peripheral of the environment. So how can your company be featured as an immersive component of a video game? To gain a greater competitive advantage in the marketplace, businesses must focus more on customer value than product quality. This is not to say that product quality is not important, but rather that more beneficial competitive advantages can come from focusing on maximizing the amount of value that your customers get. Value can be defined as a consumer's overall assessment of the utility of a product or the perceived monetary worth of what the consumer gets in exchange for the amount of money that they paid for it. So how can your company provide more value to its customers? The most significant reason consumers avoid ads is because they're not relevant and because they don't appear credible. For example, consumers understand that social media sites allow any person to publish any information pretty much. And this causes consumers to be more skeptical of social media ads because the medium, Facebook for example, has a lower perceived credibility to them. The best way for advertisers to overcome this is by choosing better mediums to advertise or by increasing the relevance of their ads through better targeting and creative. So, are your company's ads getting in front of the right audience? A study of a Japanese furniture company found that user-generated products sold twice as many units as designer-generated products. And the main reason for this was because users were able to create designs that were more unique than what the contracted designers could do on their own. So, is there opportunity for your business to let customers design your next product line? A study of 256 TV commercials for cleaning brands found that ads in emerging markets influence consumers differently than ads in developed markets. Emerging countries were more influenced by products that focused on the functionality, whereas developed countries were more influenced by products that focus on an experience, so something that evokes some kind of emotion or imagination. So, do your ads focus on functionality or experience? Have you ever seen an Instagram influencer post something and wondered if it was actually an ad? I think most people would agree that it's important to disclose if something is sponsored or not. One study confirmed that audiences are able to recognize ads more effectively when the Instagram post contained a disclosure that said something like paid ad. This isn't really too surprising to learn, but at least there's now evidence to support that it's effective to use explicit disclosure language. So, do your sponsored posts contain a clear disclosure? Consumers choose to share ads for the purpose of helping others, but also expect a reward in return, such as a reputation enhancement among their friends. Ads are especially likely to be shared when there's a low reputational risk of doing so, meaning it's not controversial and would not reflect poorly on the person sharing it. High-risk ads, or rather highly controversial ads, will still be shared, but only if the expected reward of sharing that is higher as well. So what is the risk versus reward of somebody sharing your company's ads? Have you ever wondered what causes people to have higher expectations for service providers? Neither, but some researchers from Texas A&M University did, and here's what they found. They found that more strict or urgent expectations of a service provider often came from customers who had expectations from their own supervisors. For example, technicians who repair blood test machines are under harsher expectations from their medical customers because they're under expectations from doctors. They call these enduring service intensifiers and require service providers to be more prepared and well-equipped so they can successfully complete their job to meet these harsh expectations. So, are customers imposing an enduring service intensifier on your business? It was discovered that many businesses have a group of people who are not customers who have a very positive attitude towards the brand. The reason they're not your customers might be because your product is not available in their marketplace, or maybe because they're not in need of your product at that moment in time. For example, a furnace that doesn't need to be replaced every 5 or 10 years. These non-customers are a lot easier to convert into customers, and so they might be an important audience for you to consider targeting with specific messages and offers. So, do you have a strategy to attract non-customer fans? If you're running an online community, it's important to understand the purpose or goals your members have, and then facilitate the community in a way that helps them meet those goals. For example, network-based communities are made up of people who want to give or receive value. So what you're looking for is a venue or a platform or a tool that provides features that help with the transmission of value between members. For example, tools, FAQs, easily accessible resources, search tools, etc. The other type of community are social communities, which are about building relationships among members. And with these types of communities, you want a venue or platform that does not have excessive features, they're easy to use, and they make it easy to interact with the other members without distraction. So, are you building a network or a social community? Knowing this information doesn't help unless you apply it, which is why you should watch this video right here, where I show how I use this information to create better ads.